Hi everyone, thanks for being here. I'm Raiko, and I'm joined here by Mo and Jerry from Animoca. And welcome to the Tokenomics Clinic. So today we're going to be having an open discussion with you guys. If you have a token, you're planning on launching a token, you want to discuss anything with us, we'll be having Q&A, opening it up to questions, and just giving you some insights and feedback from our experience.
I think something to add from feedback from previous sessions that we've done. Can everyone hear me okay? Is that sometimes when we talk about tokenomics, we have to try and generalize so there's an understanding for everyone. But in most instances, projects need that deeper dive or something a bit more curated, which is why we've changed up the way we're presenting today. And more the onus is on you to ask us questions and really try and get as much out of us in the time we have together. So again, if you have questions, please put your hands up. Please don't be afraid to ask.
I think they're a bit shy at the moment. So before we start, I think it's important to set the stage, as you said, and some common grounds. So what I always like to do when I start conversation on tokenomics is defining what, for me and for us, is the core reason to have a token, which is to incentivize or disincentivize desired or undesired behaviors, and that's it. Anything else is just essentially add-ons, noise that comes from doing a correct job. So I always put Bitcoin as an example, because Bitcoin only has to incentivize the miners. Then becoming a source of wealth, custody of wealth, hedge for inflation, so on, is a byproduct of that incentivization process. So I think that is one of the most important things that we look at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And don't know what your opinion is.
Well, I think other ways to look at a token is what can you do the token for? Because tokens are used to bootstrap an ecosystem or your own product economy. So it's very important to think about tokenomics not just as the allocations and vestings you normally see, but also on the utility aspect and also what value can it generate for your project. So how does value accrue back into this fungible token? Or if other people have NFTs, that also counts. How does value accrue flow into those assets you have and generate a positive flow for your whole ecosystem? So all the different pillars and touch points that work for your product and that may touch upon Web3 tooling or any other traditional aspects that allow your business to operate. So tokenomics is very broad, and it should be thought of as strategically as well, a position of the brand that you're building for your company or project.
And I think I have a question for you guys, and I'll bring the mic round, but it would be good to hear what some of you in the audience think tokenomics means, just to see if we can reach consensus on a definition today. So I don't want to point anyone out, but do we have any takers? Okay. So please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Logan. I am an early core contributor to Eliza OS, the AI agent framework from AI16Z. We're working on DeFi rewards. DeFi summer, just 3 weeks away. I guess to the question, what token economics mean is that incentive structure, whether it's the human participant or this new market participant of AI agents. It's the ability for you to be a part of the ecosystem and show that, if you're buying something, if you're holding as a whale, if you're inclusive of a community, or if you're using an NFT tokenomics structure, exactly the same thing. My question to you, do you want me to pass around, or do you want to...
Maybe let's get a couple more
definitions,
and then
more
and then
definitions.
If not, I want to pick people at random if no one puts their hand up. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Logan. Let me see. Let's go introduce yourself and then give us your definition of tokenomics, please.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Solo. I was head of BD for Galaxy for 2 years. I would say tokenomics would be the distribution of the supply for a token in one way. And also how is the cliff and the vesting handled for that token, but also how much that token has utility for the user itself as well. It's important that it has some kind of value wheel to it. I've seen so many projects just launching a token and using it as a governance token initially. I think that's the meme for everyone. And then eventually they're like, okay, we're going to give it a utility because the token is what you need, or the promise of the token is what you need to first get growth for your project.
Couldn't agree more. Oh, excellent. You can go next after. You go for it.
Hi, I'm Tilo. I work with Light Protocol, and for me, essentially, I mean, you guys summed it up pretty well, but I guess what a token essentially is for to incentivize a certain behavior and to sort of also disincentivize the wrong behavior for the network. So, and the tokenomics part is just that this is balanced, I guess, with the supply, the distribution, the faucets and the sinks for the token. That's.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Julian and co-founder and CEO of The Source. And been said to the degree, incentivize the community, create a community, but eventually it's about sharing the value in a fair way.
True, and I think from what we've heard from our 4 different contributors, gives us an idea of how wide and far-reaching tokenomics is and the layers of complexity that are there. I'm going to just go back on stage again. And does anyone else want to give us a definition of tokenomics or something that we might have missed?
Want me to do it?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bart, and I want to have a definition of ownership, because I think ownership has 3 parts, and that's about the common. If you have a house, the house is something, what we call ownership. Then somebody can decide about the house, who can paint the house, and finally who can use the house, the utility, governance, and the common. And I think the token, your question, is all about all the 3 parts of the ownership, how you can use, govern, but also the common, who's the real owner or not.
Thank you. Wanna go? Oh.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Antoine. I'm the director and co-founder of the Wakwali Foundation. We do decentralized certification. And for me, tokenomics, it's all about offer and demand and how it aligns with the utility of what you are creating as a token. So cliff vesting is part of it, total supply, and of course, like the fundamentals behind them.
And I think a general question to everyone, and it'll be a binary question, but not a yes or no question. Do we think tokenomics are static or dynamic? Hands up if you think tokenomics are static, and once they're designed, they should never change. Hands up if we think they should be dynamic, and it should be something that's constantly iterating. And hands up if we've fallen asleep because we've bored you. Okay, no, hands up, but we're doing well, So I think like we've heard from us up on stage, but also from so many different contributors in the audience. But I think maybe the next step is we have a few questions, maybe from different projects that want to ask questions around tokenomics. And the way I want to approach it is not just us that will be giving answers. If there are people in the answers who feel they can contribute, to also maybe put their hand up and be able to contribute some value to this discussion. I think Logan's clearly shotgunned the mic, so.
Yeah, I have a question about just, I guess, unduly whales in an ecosystem, something I'm dealing with right now. I guess, is it just, it's the way of the market, open market, considering a situation that I'm in, where it's not, they don't have governance play or something to that nature of, dealing with and recognizing whales in the ecosystem.
I mean, for me, if a token is pre-TGE, then you can quickly identify who your whales are, and it's a problem that can be circumvented at that stage from the initial distribution. If it's post-TGE, it becomes a lot more challenging because of the ownership aspect that was raised over by the gentleman over there. Because now that they have ownership of those tokens, it's their choice whether they want to acquire more, whether they want to sell, unless an incentive or a disincentive is created that might actually reward more value to users with less tokens maybe versus the whales, or having different token games that are segregated for those who hold above a certain amount or those who hold within a specific range. So there's then different ways depending on what the underlying product is trying to achieve. That it doesn't have to be the same game for everyone.
It's also hard to identify whales. So in NFT communities, you can have a forum to reach out to them, let's say on Twitter or on Discord. But if it's a fungible token, then you would have to investigate who this person is and what their holdings look like. But actually from that activity, you're able to deduce what kind of persona they are. Are they a trader in it for an ROI? What's the ROI they generally exit at? And then you can attune yourself to your token design around what these whales generally do. So that's one aspect, but of course that touches upon privacy. And then does your project have enough resources to go and investigate who your major holders are? Are those holders dormant or are they active? And then of course it's then dropping a message to them if the amount of tokens they hold would impact your ecosystem. But I guess in Web3 there's lots of ways this can be done. It's just how far are you willing to do that to identify your most notable holders?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that as well, following on Mo's comment. It is very important to understand that each project is very unique and the objectives of a project is unique. I mean, let's say you have 2 gaming projects launching. And they're both shooters, FPV, similar to COD or Fortnite or whatever. Even though they might be launching simultaneously and very similar games, the dynamics can be completely different, and the objectives of each team in the short, medium, long term are different. So you cannot look at it as, oh, this worked for XYZ, it'll work for me. We see this a lot, and probably you guys as well. And it never works like this. As also Jerry was saying, like, you need to identify who the whales are, what their objectives are, and so on. I mean, for a VC, it's very easy, right? They just want to make money as fast as possible. But then other participants might just want to have more power in the community because they enjoy the game or they enjoy the project and things like this. So it's very important to analyze from this critical perspective how the objectives are and what they are and how can we achieve them actually. So I think we have a question on there. Yeah. All right.
Hey, G. Question. So we all know you, Mo, you stand for brand and quality. How do you choose a tokenomics brand company? Because I bet there's a lot of competitors now grown. How do you know which one to trust? You know, how do you know that these guys are not going to write you a ChatGPT tokenomics document and go, good luck? Apart from you, we know you, you're the face, we can trust you. But how is a small startup, let's say?
I think it's by building a relationship, as in the same way, if you're a project raising and you're genuine, you want to make sure the investors coming in are good people that are not necessarily going to dump on you. You build that relationship. I think with anyone who's coming in to provide the service, what they're fundamentally providing is value, and you have to make sure that there's, on a human level, that there's elements of trust are there. And it might be difficult to do that if it's just like a Discord chat or a Telegram chat. So it might be meeting people in conferences. It could be going on Googles or Zooms where you're doxing one another to each other, if that makes sense, and build up that trust that's there. But then on the technological layer, you can also have the funding in terms of, right, you're being paid if it's in tokens, if it's in stables, or if it's in a mix of both. You can have that gated through the smart contracts to make sure, okay, once the deliverable is hit, then something can be released, so at least you're protected from that perspective. But it's business, and you cannot blindly trust in business. So I think that's like the core thing that I would say. And being a mathematician, like a lot of what we're seeing in the space, it's hypothesis testing and experimenting. And if an experiment goes wrong, it happens as well, versus someone actually trying to rug or trying to be nefarious in their activities.
I mean, yeah, the experimenting part, I mean, just discussed it before. The approach that we take on tokenomics is data-driven. We model protocols one-to-one scale, run tests before they actually launch. Because a lot of things are very experimental, as Mo mentioned. And there's a lot of innovation going on in this space, a lot of very cool things happening. And I mean, some are a bit crazy, but not in a necessarily bad way. They're just crazy and make sense for the project. And when you're testing out new things, things happen, right? So yeah, it's normal, but then, as we were saying at the beginning, being able to be dynamic, responsive to situations and being pragmatic, and going to founder's point, something I think it's part of the pill for success is being very, a founder has to be unwavering, like optimistic, pragmatic, and being like willing to put his ego on a side and admit when things have gone wrong to be able to solve them. And I think that is something that links into the tokenomics then as well, when they're designing it, and you can see it in certain aspects as well.
And also, I would just like to add that when you look for a tokenomics advisor or an advisory firm, it's really important to look at the team and how knowledgeable they are about the space, because it moves very fast. So is the person you're speaking to attuned to what's happening, the newer innovations, the new metas that's happening, because that's directly related to how they would design your ecosystem for the timing you want to launch at. So a team needs to always be live and have people who are in the trenches, I would say, that are looking at where the liquidity is at. So are people going into utility tokens now? Are people going to stable coins more? Is it meme coin market again? Or is there this next shiny new thing? Like maybe InfoFi is hot for now, but is it going to continue for the next half of the year? So we saw these metas expire very quickly, like I guess Bitcoin, like Ordinals was very hot last year, and then it's kind of withered away. But it may come back in another season, or people just move on to the next new thing. So I think knowing the team and who you're talking to and working with, and how attuned they are with your vision as well, and how you see the space is very important to look at.
Yep, and
Next question.
The question, yeah, go for it.
Hello, my name is Yuri. So my question is, like, I've been thinking about it, for years. Like, we all know that, on the market right now, we have a huge amount of tokens that still holds value, and they are mostly governance tokens. But at the end of the day, these governance tokens do literally nothing. It's mostly useless governance proposals that means nothing. But at the same time, they still hold value, and they still are being traded for some reason. So what do you guys think about this type of tokens and this type of, we call tokenomics, and why do they still hold value?
I can take a stab at that. Yeah, so I think you're right. There's lots of tokens that say governance as a key utility, and some may hold value, but most don't, because in reality, they're not governing over anything. And the rights they're willing to give away, the project, they've not been upfront about it. It's not clear what they're promising you. And even though they do promise it on Twitter or in their light paper, where is the regulation that allows a holder to enforce this? So I think that's one aspect to look at it. Another is governance over protocols that have a forum, so a discourse where things are being managed, so you can put up improvement proposals, you can look at where the discussion is, and there's like voting tooling that you can actually use to commit your tokens. A lot of projects say they are going to deliver governance, but there's nowhere you can go and stake, or nowhere where you can assign your token rights or delegate your rights away. So a lot of this is ultimately missing, hence the tokens trend to zero, because the value of holding that token, the governance promise, was not there. But the value in maybe holding Bitcoin as a stable growth of, not stable, like a volatile growth of asset might be a better play than watching my governance token draw down 90% like a slow rug. So I think that's the issue with the space, and it's identify those protocols or projects that are delivering something with the governance they promise.
To add to that as well, I think someone mentioned before ChatGPT. Yeah. When you put a ChatGPT like, hey, I want to do a utility token, first thing it'll say is like governance. And I think it falls also because a lot of projects, when they're building the token, they're not looking into their objectives, how they can create the mechanisms for the token. And there's like, hey, I want to have a token to help my project finance myself, grow, create a community, and so on. But I'm not looking to the utilities and that also objectives. I'll just say it's governance. And eventually we'll try and figure it out, which never happens, or rarely, I would say.
Yeah. In crypto, is always about, or in Web3, it's always, the token is about the promise of something in the future. And that speculative element is very often priced within the valuation of the token itself. It's less so about the product you're building and how well or how many customers you have, because I feel in reality, a lot of these projects can just take the revenue in fiat, in dollar. It's much more stable. But a token just allows them to explore much more network effects, the way you're able to seed an economy. It's like a voucher system in a department store. If I give you $10 in voucher, you're likely to come back and use that, but most of my things might cost 15 or 20, so you're topping up, and that's the retention mechanic a token is supposed to provide. But not a lot of projects design their token this way, and it's probably anchored due to there's not much I can do with it, so let me throw in governance first. But am I willing to give away 50% of my revenue share back into the accrual of the token? That's uncertain, and it's not always, enforced or done in a promised manner. So I think that's why there's this dichotomy about whether governance is good, whether it works or not, or should we just stick with traditional board of directors and just do things in the more traditional manner. Yeah.
I think if we ignore the projects that label themselves as governance tokens for the sake of regulation and look at projects that genuinely were trying to have DAOs and governance, I think the time horizon is very important. Earlier I said that every token that's released is a hypothesis, it's an experiment. And we also agreed, I think unilaterally within the group, that tokenomics have to iterate and improve over time, and that governance is part of the token economic framework as well. And what we've seen so far, maybe DeFi is where we saw first governance outside of maybe the Ethereum, the DAO hack with Ethereum, but we've started to see the iterations in governance in DeFi where maybe they're at V2, V3, and things are stabler. They're not stable as of yet, but there's been improvements within those ecosystems. When we look at maybe more raw DAO tokens, when I say about that, where it's not underpinned by DeFi, again, I'm wearing an Ape t-shirt, so ApeCoin being a prime example of a governance token. There have been many failures within that ecosystem, but that's also meant there's many learning points. And I think this is, as a space, is something we miss, is if something's gone wrong, we now know how not to do something, but it also gives us opportunities to learn and iterate and improve. And one of the big things, in my opinion, missing with governance is actually reputation, because we're in a decentralized space where a lot of people are anonymous, and it's one token, one vote tends to be the governance structure. So you don't have maybe some of those personal connections to know who's voting in what way, and what the reasoning for their voting is. But if you add in a reputation layer, maybe my governance power changes based on how I've been voting previously and the outcome of those votes, and have these votes provided value, then we start to see a very different dichotomy starting there. The other aspect, which is what I'm really a firm believer in, is actually the community itself. Because what you've done is you've given the community a pot of money, and the onus is on you as token holders to go and grow this pot of money together by creating and providing value back to the ecosystem. And that's what we are slowly starting to see within ApeCoin DAO. We've seen this within EDU coin as well. We have Open Campus, which is an education protocol. That launched in 2023, and I'll spend a minute maybe just going deeper into that, because the approach, again, having seen what had happened with ApeCoin in the early days, we knew that the fully decentralized approach is very challenging when there's no reputation. So we went for a mixed approach, where actually, as opposed to giving out much smaller grants, we were giving out bigger grants to the tune of $5 million or $10 million, where there's accountability. And we had a $10 million fund or grant as a global educator fund to incentivize teachers to create content. We had another $10 million fund for an accelerator to onboard 100 educational technology companies into this ecosystem. So it's a very different approach to how a DAO can be run. And I think it's more the case of, again, the time horizon is very important. We tend to look at success from the price perspective. If an asset is priced higher than what I brought it for, that is success. We look at value purely from a monetary perspective, but there are other forms of value within token and digital ecosystems as well. But that was a very good question, by the way. Thank you.
I'll sit here. I think you guys, we've been through this rodeo for several years, and I think what you guys are talking about is also the narrative that changed, right? So you had your token, which you mentioned about, you have your shitcoin. You launch it, great, it goes down. That used to be your future, right? You're betting on the future. Now you got the market for the last 12, 16 months, you're seeing it's all about IP. And it's still based on the same idea that you're building a culture. The whole idea of giving them tokens or giving them NFTs, and even look at you guys, you're both in the same brand, but you're representing different cultures behind, right? You got a different NFT from Mo. Mm-hmm. Why? Because something is related to you. Before it was great, you could launch a token in the promised land, but now it's all about, as you said, the retention, the memberships, being part of the culture, supporting the culture, and being part of something that feels related to you. So narrative change. I think that we're moving from IP to retention. Now we've got a little bit gambling narrative coming on, 4 or 5 months, but I think it's going back into IP and bringing and rewarding your users coming back in a retention plan. So the token, if you launch any new tokens, it's more about the model of a subscription model, where your token represents a access, or your token represents a membership or amount of points you have. Am I right? Am I on the right track? What do you guys think?
What you could do, you could replace the tokens with dollar or any currency, and the same service can be held.
Correct.
Yeah, so it doesn't justify the use of a token. So I think a lot of projects need to think about why they're issuing the token, what can be done with it, and I guess the space needs to innovate in that way, because that hasn't been sticky and that playbook hasn't been written out. That's why we see a lot of tokens launch, and then in 3 or 6 months you will see the chart is down 90%. It doesn't matter if they're on Binance or on DEX only. It's just the nature of how it works, because the product market fit of the token is not there. And I think the way we should start thinking about token design is, yes, I have my business with the product that's being built, but the token itself is also a live product, and it has more liquidity than normal. So again, back to the department store analogy, the voucher given by your favorite department store, it's not that liquid. You trade it within people who also shop in the same place, and they might take a discount for it, or there's an expiry date. But a token is different. You can convert it immediately to any other ecosystem you have more affinity to. So let's say for me it's Doodles. I can convert it to Doodles and spend it there within the merch they have or whatever syncs that they are going to offer in future. But very often there's no other option than to convert outwards to something you would use like Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, or even stables, and hence the product market fit of the token that you're launching is not there. So I think it's important to think of the token as the product, another product of its own, and it requires live ops just as much as your own business that you're building in Web3.
Yeah, and actually would like to add, even sometimes more attention, the token. Because we have a lot of players, right? You go do the go-to-market strategy for the token. You have market makers, which can jeopardize your project very quickly if you don't use them well. Mm-hmm. You have your marketing strategy only for the token launch, the community, managing them. So sometimes it's even more sticky than the business itself. Yeah. And you mentioned gambling. Gambling is very ABC when it comes to a business, right? Come, pay, play the game. You have some odds of winning or losing. That's it. 2% in Europe by law, depending on the country more or less. But then you add a token to that, and then you start getting all these caveats that have an impact as well.
But gambling, the only reason it became narrative is, well, I love different ecosystems, but Ton, proven gamification, brought users online. Gamification turned slowly into gambling, started turning into addiction, and it turned into narrative of gambling, right? It's just evolving. And the finance part that he's talking about, I think this is all back at school 101, your finance lessons. It's the same thing. Web3 is not innovative. It's just the same financial models, remodeled for Web3, and just doing it in a, I call it a little bit Degen style. That's it, and path your way, right? But go ahead, Mo. Go ahead.
Like it's an issue in a space because we've attracted and fostered a culture that doesn't actually provide value. It's very extractive, it's zero sum. And that's why, sort of going back to the earlier point of DAOs, why a lot of tokens have failed and a lot of DAOs have failed, is a lot of token economies have failed in general outside of market conditions and sentiment, is the utility that's been designed is not actually being used. So people holding a token are not using that token for the utility. They're not using it for the governance. They're holding it to speculate. So to your point, gambling. Speculation, gambling. And that's the issue we have right now. And it's sort of, it's like if you zoom out, there's an even bigger problem we have, which is why a lot of token launches have been failing. It's the system is designed to fail from the offset, especially if you go down a centralized exchange listing, because the exchange will say, okay, we need 100,000 followers on Twitter, we need X amount on Discord, these are the metrics you need to hit. So a project will then go, they'll do some kind of farming campaign, they will get the metrics that are required to list, but what they've attracted are real users who will use the token in the way it's meant to be used. They've attracted people who are looking for free money.
Yeah, zombies.
For zombies, for farmers. And we've seen it. You then, okay, you won the list, you're going to have to then go do a raise to get the different deposits you have to give to the exchange, the tokens you give to the exchange in advisory. And this isn't all exchanges, of course. And the token launches. Believe what you if you want or not. Yeah. And on the timeline, sometimes the exchanges dump, it launches at a high valuation, the token price crashes, rinse, repeat. So actually at this point, we've spoken more about exchanges and about farmers than we have about the actual product or about finding product market fit. And for me, that's the challenge right now, is the user base we're appealing to is not the correct user base for a lot of the products we're trying to release. If you're releasing a gambling-based product or a degen-based product, then this is exactly the game to play. But if it's not, then we're playing the wrong game.
I think it's also the cultural thing. So that you're right, but I think if they zoom out and actually build a product or build a culture around it, so not the aim just okay, I'm going to launch a pump it and dump it.
A lot of these founders are first-time founders. And
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. I'll give them like, no, man, you're the G.
Yeah, I was going to say as well. So,
Oh, sorry, there's a question.
Okay.
In the,
so just to add to this point very quickly, isn't part of the problem then just the projects launching the token, and in a lot of cases it's to raise funds, and then it's the VCs also who ask for certain, hey, where are you going to get listed? So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I want to raise funds to build a product for users. I don't have the funds. Then I go to a VC, and the VC is like, wait, where are you going to get listed? Then you start looking at all of this, and then you enter this cycle where you forget about your initial idea.
True, but a lot of the genuine VCs are happy to be locked up for a period of time as well. And I think that's a good way to distinguish between a good investor and a bad
100%.
investor. Yep.
No worries. Okay, so also picking up on the point and what the man in the middle said.
Can you hold the mic?
Yeah,
Jerry.
yeah, I can't read your name. Sorry, Jerry. No. So you mentioned that most tokens fail or tokenomics fail and drop 90% or 95%, whatever, after half a year or a year, and this is mostly true. Yes, but getting to my point, what would you say is a good example, and how was this example designed that avoided this, if there is any? Like, there are a few examples in the space that sort of maintain the stable value or whatever and have a well-designed token economy. But yeah.
I think, like, for me, Hyperliquid, like more recently, and the main reason is they found product market fit. They had the users using the platform prior to there being any token. They were using the platform because it solved a genuine problem for them, which was user experience when it came to decentralized trading. And then you do the airdrop. Now, these aren't farmers, or these aren't zombies. These are people who are genuinely using the platform. And with the right tokenomics, we've seen what Hyperliquid was at, what, $1, $2 for a period of time, and then it exploded. The rest is history. So for me, that's an easy answer. But again, that's because the product is aimed at the casino, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the token has a real utility, and the project has real users that are not just zombies or farm the product. So yeah, okay.
Which also justifies them to launch their own chain, like Hypercore EVM, because they already have that distribution base. Whereas a lot of projects say they want to launch a chain on like Arbitrum L2, because there's a lot of one-click solutions, but there's no need for it. We should just aggregate all the users into something that's existing, that way you can benefit off network effects.
Yeah, maybe that's also the go-to-market, find product market fit, and then launch your own layer one. Yeah.
Another example is, oh, sorry, Mo.
I was going to say it raises the valuation as well, or it did for a period of time.
Oh yeah, the chain valuation. Another example is Kaito. So Kaito is quite new, and I guess the token price is around $1.70, $2. So it's done well post airdrop, and I think it's also found that product market fit, because information is data for us, and it's very useful. And as one of the first movers to build something of this scale and adoption, and the token utilities it's promised, that has actually formed a good ecosystem loop where you get governance over tokens given from other projects to have their yapping or that attention. So I think Kaito is a good example to look at as well.
Yeah, I like a lot Chainlink, to be honest. Chainlink. The Link token. I think they're doing a great job. I mean, they've always been, not only as an entity, but token-wise. And they recently announced the staking for their build program. I think it's a very interesting mechanism, which was in the making for some time.
Yeah.
And accrues a lot of value to their ecosystem and the projects within the ecosystem as well. So I think...
I think just going back to Kaito, because like Kaito, like the three we've given was more product market fit than token. But Cookie, being a competitor to Kaito, actually had the token out first, and then they found product market fit, and then we saw the impact on token price as well. So there is the opportunity to have a token or an NFT or something out, then find product market fit. The challenge then comes down to your user retention, in terms of who's actually holding your assets to then be converted into users. So I think there is hope the opposite way around, but the conversion that way is very, very low. If it's token first, then PMF.
I think man behind you had a question. In gray.
Yeah, I had the same question. Could you give an example of a good tokenomics and why? But yeah, you said that.
Great minds.
I'll go. I'm working out here, just going up and down. Before I sit down, any more questions on the subject?
As in any questions you guys might have, if you're working on a project and you might need some advice on your tokenomics, I think this might be a good time for us to go down that route. I can see a few founders in the room as well. So you've got Air We Are, excellent. We'll go one at the back and then we'll come to you
start at the
afterwards.
back, with permission. I haven't spoken yet.
Hi there, I'm Simon. I'm the founder at Goat Gaming. Question for you. So you've been talking about different mechanics of tokens and things like decentralization and giving people governance rights. Like, how relevant do you think governance is for games and gaming more broadly?
It's a really good question. I think it depends what they have governance over and if that's meaningful to them in terms of the gamers. So it's a semi-cop-out answer for now. But if we're talking about governance over, let's say, marketplace fees and there's a high volume, then something like that becomes interesting because it might become another revenue stream. So, but is that for every single gamer? Most definitely not. So I think it's then down to the different personas you have within your ecosystem as to whether governance is meaningful or not.
So to follow on from your response, do all governance paths just lead to the fee switch eventually? Is that really the only thing that governance matters for?
I think that's what we've seen work, which is why it leads there. Until we have more active community members who are actual gamers and actually taking part in ecosystems for the right reasons, not just to extract, then we'll start to see more interesting governance reasonings, if you like, or models coming out. Again, I think it's the time horizon on where we're at as of now, which is why we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, maybe a meta game is needed around governance so that these gamers within your community are interested in the extra carry you're providing. So maybe power, those that are interested in governance are normally seeking power and an influence. So if a meta game around that could be designed, then perhaps you'll see more uptake for governance in there.
I think the perception of decision making also comes into play here. So from a founder's perspective, maybe you don't have to go the full governance power route, but then use that governance, or let's call it semi-governance, to simplify operations within your ecosystem. So if you're launching a new skin or you're A/B testing, there's several skins, not sure which one might fit best, why don't you put it out to the community and ask them?
Yeah.
But you're limiting that decision making, and that's why I was saying the perception right of decisions. So I think that can be a route for gaming, which is quite interesting, and not giving just the full-blown control over the ecosystem.
Thank you.
I think there's actually one more thing to add quickly from that. I think when we think about user base, we think about value or capital, there are different types of capital. There's what we tend to see is economic capital, which is the actual dollar value. And there's also the social capital. And I think we have symbolic capital and cultural capital. And I think on the governance side, for some users, it might be the symbolic value that actually I have a large amount of governance power. It's more the flex, if you like. We know gamers like to flex. And then you get the gamers who want to follow the gamers who like to flex, and it begins to give you network effects. So it might not be for the sake of governance, but it might be an additional alleviator for network effects to actually come into to a token ecosystem. For now, at least.
Thanks. You mentioned, so if we have projects, so I can pitch mine, and so we founded the source with the 5 instead of the S. So the idea is basically to geolocalize artwork, digital arts. So it can be image, video, or audio, music. And you have to go to that location to listen to the music or to view the photography or these kind of things. And we offer the minting capabilities. So there could be NFTs and could be limited edition, like you got 10 listens of this song, no more. And if you connected your wallet, then it's transferred to your wallet automatically. So we've got a smart contracts for that. The whole idea here is to have an overlay of art and creativity on top of the real world. to drive strong engagement, because all the people going to a specific location to get access to some artist drops, you know, in exclusive content is very high engagement. So you can imagine all things about token gating later on. Like, okay, I've been, you know, I went to get this single from this artist, and now suddenly I get access to the backstage, etc. So we did a few things. We tested photography, music. Music works very well, to be honest. We worked with Agoria. I don't know if you know the guy. I'm sure you know. So dropped the single the day before he released the single, somewhere in Paris, and people, they were coming, and it's all about reconnecting to others. Actually, it's just the digital is an excuse to reconnect to the world, to go to physical locations and to have a discussion with people around. And we've taken it from the angle you said, like, it's not about the tokenomics, so we're building a community and the value prop. There are NFTs behind the scenes, because they could be either traditional digital arts or NFTs, Web 2 or Web 3. And we have these tokenomics in mind when we think it's the right time, typically how you incentivize your community. So there are three angles. The more you engage with the application, of course, and you engage with the artist, you're rewarded. So this token is called a spark, like sparking, sparks of creativity. So you get some sparks. There's also things about reporting content, because it's user-generated content. Everybody can be, you know, creative. So obviously you want to incentivize the nice behavior. So it's back to your point on the behavior. And the last one is about sharing the value. You can stake on the artists in some ways, like you can give him sparks for a given set of digital art. And if this art is sold, because you can distribute these arts like at a location, you get a fair share of that. So I would say it's the three mechanisms we have in place. And then you've got things like the number of likes, and you're rewarded and this kind of things. But that's the mechanics, I would say, overall. So happy to get your views on that. If you've got any comments.
So I actually, just so you guys have a bit of context, I actually read the tokenomics before the call, and I do have some comments here.
Great, thanks.
I'm concerned, and I'm actually very curious to know also Mo and Jerry's opinion here. I'm very concerned that you have a fixed rate of sparks being given for minting in certain actions. So for instance, minting an NFT granted 1 spark, right, to the creator, and certain like kind of like set in stone. And I'm very worried when at least personally, when I see stuff like this, because, okay, today you have 1,000 users and they're minting 1,000 NFTs a day, you're giving them 1 spark. Suddenly you blow up, you're massive, and you have 10,000 people, your inflation went up the roof. And that has a very strong selling pressure then on the ecosystem. Obviously, you're rewarding those users, so on. But curious to know what you guys think on having fixed numbers for fixed events, and more when it's something like this, where
for me, it has to be dynamic, but you have to start somewhere at the same time. So I think there's a balance to it. It might be fixed maybe for the first 5-10 drops, because you know the amount of tokens that are being given out are still too small to have an impact at the beginning, but you're bootstrapping that adoption. But if it remains fixed, like the points you were making, then it breaks very, very quickly.
But then...
Yeah, I think that's really important, dynamic, because you want each design to be scalable. So you probably have some levers you can pull if your customer base scales, let's say 5x or 10x. That way you don't have to keep going back to adjust your metrics. And so dynamic is important.
Thanks, that's very clear. Noting that actually these tokens are moving, are circulating amongst the community. I mean, the sparks are moving from one to the other. You're right, it's a fixed number. You're totally right, so I get that point, and that's great. Thanks for that. But the whole idea is also to make sure that this can circulate nicely, although it's fixed. But got the point, yeah. Thanks.
I think another aspect, very quickly as well, is once you have a community or a user base, you actually have a lot of power, because you can go to adjacent maybe projects or to other businesses where you can say, well, I have a user base of X amount, what can you do for us? And all of a sudden, you're able to plug them into, could be maybe they're buying, or they get first access to tickets from the artists that they're enjoying, and it gives you more sway. And so we're linking it back to governance. Maybe that's where governance can come in, where, well, these are the artists we're speaking to. Who would you like to see us partner up with? get maybe some free merchandise or some signed merchandise and things like that. And then you begin to really grow the ecosystem, and that's where the network effects can really kick in.
Yeah, I guess in a world of like pumps where everything, all the coins are out, I mean, people are bundling. The question is to kind of vesting schedules and the emissions. Like I have a yield project, so the emissions, is it more appropriate to just try to get circulation out within the first, couple weeks, a couple months, or stretching out into the 12, 18 month cycle?
Depends on your growth.
And the project. Look at Bitcoin, 140 years to get minted everything, and then Ethereum was what, 7 years staking. So it really depends on the project. So we go back to that. What is your project? What are your objectives? And then how does everything fit in?
So some context is ensuring that you and your agent have sort of a financial symbiosis, and that it can be rewarded as well with the yield. So we want to give a UBI to the agent as you perform in your portfolio alongside with it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a business, right? And business is business. So you have to have your plans, your growth, you know how much you're going to be burning at any given moment in time. And actually, the way we describe it a lot of the times is in the intro, the Powerpuff Girls, when they start putting everything in, then something happens and it breaks. Then you're adding all of this into the mixture. You have to be very careful on.
So I guess to work against like market making and work with the groups that do that as well to ensure that they can handle the onset of tokens that'll be introduced into the market.
So on the market making side, it is a complex subject. At the end, business is done between people, and this appeals a lot to, I think, market makers and the way they interact. I mean, we all know the role of the market maker and when they appear, right? And it's something that's been going on for like 140 years already. It's delicate, I'd say. I'm not too sure what to reply. Is there
the dark magic side of the?
Sorry?
It's dark magic, really.
Yeah, it's complicated because, as I said at the beginning, like a good market maker can help your project a lot. A bad one can fuck it up. Sorry for my English, but it's the reality.
It's French.
And then you mix it with having mechanisms that may be over rewarding certain actions or that, and then you start coupling everything, and that's when the Powerpuff mixture breaks. In this case, well, you get the Powerpuff Girls and they're cool, but in a token, when that plumps 99% in one day, it's not that cool.
I think we missed you at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So again, my name is Solo. Like I was head of BD for 2 years for Galaxy. So fortunately, I was responsible for a lot of project releasing points campaigns and users getting farmed for Quest. But for the last year, I've been making AI films. I'll just explain the concept of what I'm building and how it ties into like the tokenomics. But yeah, the past year I've been like buying large supply of small market cap meme coins and creating AI films to just get some virality and increase their price. And since then I've received like requests from hundreds of communities that want some content because virality obviously is powerful. There's one of these films that coined the term LA Vape Cabal, which may or may have not led to their demise. But obviously there's a lot of demand, so I launched a platform where I've garnered some of the top AI filmmakers on there, and it lets private brands or Web3 communities essentially crowdfund different bounties where AI filmmakers can get these bounties, work with the community to create the film, have it released, and then the community members automatically are able to mint different collectibles from these movies. Now, we take a cut out of the crowdfunding and we take a cut out of the royalties. So there is revenue generation like at its core. We do want an element where when users watch the film, they can click on the screen and help train AI agents that will automate this filmmaking. So a token here would be useful to incentivize this sort of action to automate AI filmmaking like in the future. But at its core, I find it hard to like push a tokenomic in a product that already has revenue. And And yeah, basically it's hard to like push this. We already grow from community osmosis. Whenever a community launches a film on there, we gain their users. So how can we incentivize with a token like in that case? It's hard also to like justify sharing some of that revenue with the token holders, since we rather keep like 100% of it.
So for AI,
Can I add one question?
Yep.
Question. Okay, because I think that one more thing is, if you incentivize the behavior and the people get the tokens, what is stopping them not to just dump it afterwards? Because what exactly will they be using it for? For example, what could be a use case there that could be implemented? I think is something to look at as well.
I'll take the first part of whether permission.
Sure,
I'll
yeah.
leave the second part to you guys. So, from the AI side, I mean, we're all seeing this boom in AI. Just to give you a bit of insight on me, I actually was in AI before blockchain, so I went the other way around. With AI, when anyone that's launching an AI agent token, AI-related token, as a team, what the most precious thing that you want to incentivize, or that's at least my perspective, is the data generation. Data is power for AI. Like Google with Gemini and all the rest is kind of advancing very quickly in the race. Grok from XAI is advancing very quickly because they have access to proprietary data. All AI models today have consumed 100% of the existing internet data. So whoever can generate that proprietary data is going to have an edge in certain areas. So in your case, for instance, you want people to be contributing to that generation and providing data. So that is, for me, at least the number one thing you should be incentivizing through different caveats. But it's what's going to bring the most value to your business, because you're generating that proprietary data. Then how do you avoid people from selling? And there's 100,000 things you could probably do. But
I think the way I would tackle this is a fungible token needed for you? So if you want to launch a token, can you consider the NFT route? Because managing tokens that are, let's say, there's only 888 or 5,000 as a supply is much easier than a fungible token with a valuation and vesting going forward. Now you can do a lot of things with this NFT, because NFTs are a digital container that can store anything. So if you're a platform, the AI generating movies for meme coins and other communities is working, you will receive revenue and also maybe token incentives from them or other benefits which you can distribute to your NFT holders. So value can be shared across this way other than a direct translation to a fungible token. So maybe if you approach it in a different way, perhaps using NFTs, there's a solution that is more manageable and that prevents the sell pressure, the vesting of your investors, etc. And NFTs are also liquid. You can make them super liquid by going for the 404 standard, the fungibility with NFT changes, or you can go for this traditional NFT format as well, where you have more control over what you're distributing and also the valuation of it as well. Yeah.
For me to understand something maybe a bit deeper, it's you've been approached to create these different videos, and the question is, it's more on kind of how can we create a platform with the right incentives for content creators to come in and create.
I think the incentives is there for them, which is basically having to find work, but they can go on the platform and see these different bounties that are growing from crowdfunding or private brands that just put a bounty like this because they want an advertisement. So the incentive for the creators to come in is there. For the users that crowdfund the movie, the incentive is getting that work that will then spread on social media or whatever. I guess the incentive that we want is that once the movie is released, we're drafting a model that helps automate this filmmaking process, where every AI filmmaker on this platform will have its own customized AI agent that can create films automatically for them. But to train this data, we need a system for when the user watches the film, they can provide like feedback, which we do have. But the thing is it worth it to launch a token to like incentivize really this behavior, just cut down this cost and just like stick to the Fiverr/Kickstarter route? Yeah.
If you're marketing this to people who genuinely come in and use the platform, then you probably don't need the incentive to begin with, but you need the incentive later on for retention mechanism. But if you're launching it to Web3, I think from what we've said before, you'll get that initial uptake, and as soon as the token's launched, the majority will dump because they have no tangible motivation or interest in the platform itself. And I think it's just finding that balance between user adoption in Web 2 versus Web 3, and also the products you're launching in Web 2 versus the products you're launching in Web 3, because the user base is very different. And the incentive mechanisms will be very different as well on both sides.
Yeah, so when looking at the mechanisms, at the end of the day, you have to map out all the stakeholders, every single one, and then to see essentially what you want them to do, what you don't want them to do. Then as Mo said, does it actually make sense? And then as Jerry said, like, should we go for a token? Should we go for an NFT? Or maybe we should just give them Telegram stars or something. So there's a lot of options, right? And different people will want different things. And you can kind of categorize them. Obviously, then there'll be anomalies always. But then that tends to help out as well when you map that out versus your business model and how all mechanisms interact. Then you can start seeing what makes more sense.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have time for one more, or are we at time? No response. We have time for one more.
One more.
Yep. Okay. We have time for one more.
That is if there is one more.
Is there anyone more? Last one?
Yes.
There you go.
Hey guys. My name is Yuri, and we are building HypeTrack. It's the ecosystem for creators, like Web2 creators, streamers, bloggers, this type of people, to launch their own tokens, provide utility, and distribute tokens. Simple as that. Like, as for utility, it could be, selling merch, private photo shoots, whatever, like private parties type of stuff. And as for distribution, we don't want to go with airdrops or something. We want to do organical distribution, like cashback for donations or some activity on Twitch, whatever, something that people would actually do if they really, love the creator. So, like, I will like, there are a lot of questions, but I will try to make, one that concerns me the biggest. So I've been talking to many people, and when we were talking about how to launch this secondary market for this type of token, we always discuss the idea that made popular by Pump Fund, that actually bond curve and this type of sale. But for some reason, when I say that we want to go with a very simple period where there is no sales, there is nothing, that token exists, everyone gets scared immediately for some reason. I don't know why. And they say, now, if you already launched the token, you can't go and sell this token with a bonding curve. So now I'm super curious about that. I'm not a trader, I'm a mathematician. So to me, it just doesn't make sense a lot what's going to happen with the token in that case. So if you guys can explain it to me, it would be great.
It's fundamentally a zero-sum game where it's how can I make more money than the next person. But if someone's making money, someone's losing money somewhere else, and that's why they call it a casino from that perspective. So I think I'm not sure I've understood the question.
No, I mean, let's say we have a period of time where creator is actually distributing the tokens and providing utility for that, selling merch, private photo shoots, whatever. It's already, there is a fans already, there is an audience already. It's not a speculative token, it's a real demand for this token already. So we were trading it for like 6 months, and we see that there is already token on-chain activity about it. And now, but there is no price yet. It's just fans and the creator, that's it. And now we want to launch a secondary market for it. Go and sell, let's say, 5% of the whole supply to build the liquidity pools, to start actually allowing external investors to speculate on this token. So in this case, we can go with this sale type of stuff, with a bonding curve, to actually discover the price. That's, in my understanding, the main idea behind bonding curve, right?
So bonding curve fundamentally is a price discovery mechanism. You can use a different price discovery mechanism, and being a mathematician, you can design something that's novel that might actually be an upgrade and iteration on the bonding curve model that's then adopted within the space. So I think with where you're approaching it from, you should be looking at maybe where the innovation is versus what's been done before. Because you have a very different user base from the content creators and the people who are subscribing to these content creators versus the user base that exists in crypto and Web3.
Yeah, like the other ways of price discovery means someone needs to provide liquidity under the certain price he decides for some reason, right? So bonding curve seems to be fair way of finding the right price for the right creator, right? So that's what I was thinking. But everyone I've been talking to, they get scared for unknown reason that you guys already launched the token. TGE already happened. Now you can't do bonding curve sale. And I still want
Bonding curve sale of an existing token, you mean?
Yes.
So, but then...
But there's a live secondary price. There's no need to engage in a bonding curve. Unless you issued your token and it's on chain, but there's no trading market for it.
Yes, there is no trading market. There is only fans, creator, and
they can send it to themselves.
Of token locked. Right now we are playing, let's say, with 1% of this whole supply, and now we're unlocking, let's say, 5% and going with bonding curve. Does that make sense?
You can do that, right? That's like a pre-sale mechanic.
Yeah, I don't see any issue with that.
Okay,
because it's you only have 1% in circulation and there's no trading pairs. There's no liquidity fundamentally. It's different if you have 80% in circulation and then you're creating a trading pair. Then be very concerned unless the size of the liquidity is extremely deep.
So it's about amount of token we unlocked, and like at the moment we are doing, this sale. Because I've been told about this dark magic with market makers and all that stuff, but no one actually can explain what's going to be happening there.
Yeah. Well, fundamentally of the bonding curve, depending on which protocol you use, am I seeding 5% of the initial pool and the other 95% is in the underlying token, then there needs to be demand on the other side where people are giving up, if it's their ETH, their soul, to buy your token. And until that liquidity goes live, people who are holding this 1% already, they can't actually dump the token. So there's that layer of protection there.
So what should be proportion for this sale we are trying to do and unlocked pre or this sale, amount of tokens unlocked pre or this sale, and amount of tokens that we are selling at this, sale type of event? Yeah. To stay safe, what would be the proportion? 5 to 1, 10 to 1?
5 to 1, 10 to 1.
It's hard to
There's no scientific explanation behind that.
No, but you need to understand what's the size of the user base, who are we attracting. There's other metrics we have to take into consideration to make an informed suggestion. But as of now, it's very difficult to make an informed suggestion.
This falls into the when we ask a lot of funders, and I guess it happens to you as well. Hey, why is your initial liquidity 2%? And that's their reply. As I was saying, you need to look at everything and all the players, stakeholders, mechanisms, what's happening, what's not happening, what could happen, and then you can make a decision. Just asking us now here, what should it be, 5 to 1? Maybe it should be 50 to 1. I mean, might as well.
They've also asked us at the back that we're over time. So we'll continue this conversation. But I want to thank every single person who came today, who participated, or even if you've just been here listening. But quick show of hands. Did you learn something new? Quick show of hands if you learned something new. Excellent. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.